time, Dr. Freeman. The reason you probably clicked on the video is because of this game's third. It's because you've been waiting excitedly for the third installment of the series for almost 20 years, isn't it? So, in this video, I'll create a theory about how the story of Half-Life 3 could be, including the previous installments of the series. What I'll be talking about in this video is a story theory that may not be entirely accurate, but could partially be true for the Half-Life 3 story. While listening to the theories, you can write down the things you agree with or find illogical. By the way, if you enjoy theory videos like these, consider subscribing to my channel. Join this channel too so that we can have a different kind of brainstorming session in the future. Before starting the story of Half-Life 3, I'm making these theories entirely based on the main series of the game. It won't be fan-made. I'll interpret the series based on what they've shown us. So, I'll stop rambling and get straight to the point. Now, I want to go to the very end of Half-Life 2 Episode 2. Actually, if we think about the main series of the game, the story ends in uncertainty after this point, doesn't it? Gordon and Alyx seem to have achieved a victory against the Combine at White Forest. But if you've played the Half-Life Alyx virtual reality game, we actually return to this very scene, and we play the same scenario in its renewed form. Yes, Eli Vance dies in Episode 2, but in the Half-Life Alyx series, this situation changes with an offer from G-Man. Of course, he doesn't make this offer for her father's sake either. When Alyx saves G-Man from Walt, it creates a situation where they seem to come to a mutual agreement. In return for this agreement, G-Man manipulates time for Alyx and allows her to save her father at that very moment. And after that, Alyx disappears, and Gordon enters the scene by taking the crowbar from Eli. I'll touch on this exact point in a moment. G-Man could actually mess with Alyx's mind and cause trouble in the future. I'll explain. Anyway, that damn G-Man might be playing one last trick right here and could be pulling Gordon out of his own time. So this is the third game after G-Man's time manipulation intervention again. So the story of Half-Life 3 could start right here. Right at this moment, G-Man sends Gordon to another dimension. Because as I mentioned in my previous G-Man video, if you ask me, G-Man doesn't work for either the Combine or humanity. Actually, G-Man might be a being that maintains the balance between universes. Maybe this means that G-Man's employers are beyond, even Zen, and that we might encounter a power much greater and different than any of the enemies we've seen in this entire series. Maybe even a new type of dimension. We might see the Ethereals dimension in this game as well. By the way, speaking of Ethereals, I'm mentioning a completely fictional dimension name just to make it easier to explain the story. Maybe their names could be different, but what they do and where they come from is beyond even Zen. They could come from a world where there are more energetic beings and start a war to destroy us in order to end this conflict. Also, this dimension I call the Ethereals could pose a threat not only to us, but also to the Combine. So, the creatures coming from this Ethereals dimension might be coming for a complete cleansing. Also, I want to talk a bit more about this cosmic force beyond Zen. So, both the new universe and new enemies. Speaking of universe, it could also open in a new universe called Overseas. So, this Ethereals dimension I just mentioned could be a dimension that opens in the Overseas universe. I know you're confused, but I'm explaining. By the way, speaking of Overseas, I'm really just making up these names right now. Imagine it as the Ethereals dimension in the Overseas universe, a universe similar to Zen, but in a different dimension. So, you can think of it this way. Anyway, maybe in the Overseers universe, we'll have a chance to meet G-Man's real employers. So, this universe is located far beyond Z, and it might be even stronger. In fact, the universe I call Overseers might be a world where the energetic beings that maintain order among these universes exist. However, according to the story, these Overseers might want the world to pay this price in order to maintain balance between the universes. So, in short, the world might be on the list of those to be destroyed in order to maintain this order. I'm going to say something completely different now. Maybe G-Man is actually sending Gordon Freeman to this universe called Overseas. That is, to the Ataria's dimension, as a test at some point in the story. However, by completing the tasks G-Man gives him, Gordon Freeman might actually rebel against this cosmic plan and start an uprising against overseas. In fact, at this very point, just like I mentioned earlier, Alyx and Gordon might drift apart, and we might experience the story sometimes from Gordon's perspective and sometimes from Alyx's point of view. In fact, Alyx might even get help from the Vortigons to enter this dimension in order to find Gordon in the material dimension. However, G-Man might try to manipulate Alyx as he always does, and use her as a pawn against Gordon. So, moments of her father's death might constantly come to Alyx's mind, and at this point, I'll say something even more outlandish. G-Man might also manipulate Alyx's memory, distorting reality and making her remember moments where Gordon Freeman killed Eli Vance, her father. Of course, this would happen through G-Man's manipulation. He could create a false memory where Gordon kills Eli Vance, and Alyx might really start to see Gordon Freeman as an enemy. So, as a result, there could be a serious conflict between Alyx and Gordon in the story. In fact, according to this storyline, Gordon might finally find G-Man's weak spot. So actually, he might also learn that G-Man gets his power from this universe called the Overseers. So, if he severs G-Man's connection with this dimension, he could leave G-Man completely defenseless. In fact, right at this point, Gordon reaches the cosmic core of the Overseers in the Etarial dimension and could completely destroy it. So it's just a theory. I think the story could unfold in the way I described or in a similar way. So, if we consider the previous chapters of the game, I think in this story, we can even understand that Jim's real employers might be from a universe even more powerful than Combine and Zen. In fact, we might realize that in this story, we've only played a very small part, just the beginning in the first and second games. Because in the Half-Life universe, there really aren't clear answers to many things. If the story expands in the third game, we might see a storyline similar to what I just described. A more expanded universe and big answers to the questions. So, I think the story might progress at a point similar to this. In short, let's also take a look at the gameplay mechanics in Half-Life 3 Man. So, how could the gameplay in Half-Life 3 really be? First of all, there will definitely be new equipment. For example, the crowbar. It's a must-have, right? But maybe this crowbar could come with a different feature in the third game. I mentioned the Atari dimension, remember? This crowbar could also be coated with Atari energy. In fact, let's call it the Aether crowbar. I just made that up. Don't take it too seriously. In fact, I have a theory about this gravity gun too. For example, we might actually be using a more advanced version of the standard gravity gun. So, by working with energy waves, it could destroy enemies that are energetic beings in the ethereal dimension of the Overseers universe. Maybe this weapon draws its energy power from Gordon's health. So, when it's used too much, Gordon's health decreases a bit. It's like a risk-reward dynamic. Also, I think the Vortigons could have much bigger roles in this story. For example, there could be Vortigaunt crystals, and thanks to these crystals, Gordon could gain short-term dimensional vision. So, this could sometimes help us see puzzles or creatures in the other dimension. In this way, by discovering their weak points, we could get serious help from the Vortigons in this war. I think Half-Life 3 could also have a semi-open, semi-linear structure. I mean, I know it sounds a bit strange, but maybe the game would consist of 3 main areas. The first area is the classic world under Combine occupation. So, in this world, we can play in a post-apocalyptic, classic end-of-the-world style. Ruined cities, resistance camps, and Combine machines. The second world is classic Zen, but we can also see its evolved form. So it's a much more complex structure, an ecosystem where plants and alien creatures have evolved even further. In the third world, it's the ethereal dimension beyond the Zen I mentioned. In this world, gravity could be completely variable, or it could be a totally chaotic system where mathematics and the rules of the classical universe are bent. Just like our subconscious. The enemy variety could be like this. Standard Combine soldiers and synths, meaning the classic enemies, as well as creatures from the ethereal dimension. These will be new creatures, possibly more energetic beings, enemies that can move quickly, or more guard-like creatures like tanks. I'll go even further. Even Jimmy's Watcher agents could be in the game. They're more like humanoid creatures that set traps for Gordon Freeman. Lastly, I want to talk a bit about the graphics. I mean, isn't the Source graphics engine still an engine that can be enjoyed even today? So, we can see the fully developed version of this engine in this third game. So, completely photorealistic visuals, textures, rain, water effects, which, as you know, were amazing in the Source graphics engine, and of course, the physics structure. To be honest, such an advanced Source graphics engine could change the gaming world once again. In fact, I want to say this as well, maybe even Gordon Freeman's glasses could be used as a heads-up display. That would be very different, and honestly, I would like it. You know, like the advanced version of those Google glasses. Maybe we could follow the entire game's heads-up display and its components through these glasses. What are you guys talking about? I wish it would release soon so we could start playing. Do you think if Half-Life 3 had come out with a story like the one I described, it would really be the third Half-Life? Would it be able to carry on the legacy of being the third game? Would you like the story this way? I mean, when I think about it, this kind of imaginary world forms in my mind. What do you guys really think Half-Life 3 would be like? Write it in the comments. I'm really curious, man. Honestly, I'm looking forward to this game even more than Grand Theft Auto 6, to be honest. Anyway, I'm ending my video here. If you like these kinds of theories, you can subscribe to my channel. Take care of yourselves. Goodbye.